Daniel Brooks hit send on the email at 11:47 at night, knowing it would land in Alexandra Reed's inbox like a grenade. The subject line read simply, "We need to talk about the team." The body was more direct than that. He'd laid out in precise detail why her latest deadline demand was impossible, why pushing his creative team past their breaking point would cost the company more than it gained, and why leadership meant protecting people, not just driving results. His daughter Mia was asleep down the hall, her nightlight casting soft shadows across the doorway of her bedroom. Daniel could see her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, could hear the steady rhythm of her breathing. 5 years old, and already she'd learned to fall asleep without needing him there every minute. A skill born from necessity when he'd become both mother and father 3 years ago. He closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pressing down on him like a physical weight. 29 years old, creative director at one of Chicago's fastest-rising media companies. Single father. Widower. The roles stacked on top of each other until sometimes he forgot which one he was supposed to be performing at any given moment. His phone buzzed. Alexandra's response was characteristically brief. "My office, 7 a.m. Don't be late." Daniel set the phone down and let out a slow breath. Here we go again, he thought. Another battle. Another argument. Another day of pushing back against a woman who seemed to believe that sleep was optional and personal lives were excuses for underperformance. He'd been fighting with Alexandra Reed since his first week at the company 2 years ago. Back then, he'd been a senior creative lead, hungry to prove himself, determined to build something meaningful. She'd been the 32-year-old CEO who'd built the company from nothing, who worked 18-hour days and expected everyone else to match her intensity. Their first real confrontation had been over a campaign timeline. She'd wanted it done in 3 weeks. He'd said it needed 6 to be done right. She'd accused him of making excuses. He'd accused her of confusing speed with quality. The argument had been public, sharp, and had ended with her glaring at him across the conference table before saying, "Fine, you have 4 weeks, and it better be exceptional." It had been exceptional. The client had renewed for 3 years, and Daniel had learned something important about Alexandra Reed. She respected people who stood up to her, even if she fought them every step of the way, especially if they fought her. The pattern had repeated itself dozens of times since then. Deadlines, budgets, creative direction, team resources. They argued about everything, sometimes in meetings, sometimes in her office, sometimes in the hallway, where anyone could hear. The rest of the executive team had learned to just let them work it out, recognizing that somehow, through all the conflict, they produced the best work in the company. But lately the fighting had intensified. Alexandra had been pushing harder, demanding more, accepting fewer compromises. And Daniel had been pushing back just as hard, not just for himself, but for his team. The people who worked under him were talented, dedicated, and increasingly exhausted. They stayed late because he stayed late. They pushed themselves because he pushed himself. But there was a limit, and Alexandra didn't seem to recognize that limits existed. The alarm went off at 5:30. Daniel dragged himself out of bed, showered, made coffee, and started the morning routine he could perform half asleep. Wake Mia. Coax her into clothes, negotiate breakfast, pack lunch. Find the missing shoe that was somehow always missing. Drop her at school by 7:15 so he could make it to the office by 7. Diane, his late wife's mother, met them at the school entrance. She'd been a lifeline since Sarah died, helping with pickups and emergencies and the 1,000 small crises that came with single parenthood. "You look tired," Diane said, taking Mia's hand. "I'm fine," Daniel lied. "You're always fine," she said, giving him a look that said she knew better. "You need to take care of yourself too, you know." "I know, I will." Another lie, but a well-intentioned one. Mia hugged his legs. "Bye, Daddy. Love you." "Love you too, sweetheart. Be good." He watched her walk into the school, her backpack almost as big as she was, before heading to his car. The drive to the office took 20 minutes in light traffic. He used the time to mentally prepare for whatever Alexandra was going to throw at him this time. She was already in her office when he arrived, standing by the window with her back to the door. The Chicago skyline stretched behind her, morning light turning the glass towers into pillars of gold and shadow. She didn't turn when he knocked. "Come in and close the door," she said. Daniel did, crossing his arms as he stood in front of her desk. "You wanted to see me." "I read your email." Still, she didn't turn. "You think I'm pushing too hard." I know you're pushing too hard. My team has been working 60-hour weeks for a month straight. We've delivered every campaign on time, exceeded every metric you've set, and brought in 2 new clients. And instead of acknowledging that, you're asking for another impossible deadline. Nothing's impossible if you want it badly enough, she said. That's not true, and you know it, Daniel shot back. You can't manufacture time. You can't force creativity by demanding it. And you can't keep burning people out and expect them to stay loyal. Finally, she turned, and he saw the exhaustion in her face that mirrored his own. Dark circles under her eyes, tension in her jaw, the kind of weariness that came from carrying too much for too long. "What would you have me do?" she asked, and there was something rawer in her voice than usual. "We have competitors circling, clients who'll jump ship the second we show weakness, a board that questions every decision I make. I don't have the luxury of slowing down." "I'm not asking you to slow down," Daniel said. "I'm asking you to be realistic about what's achievable, to trust that the people you've hired know their limits." "Limits are excuses," she said flatly. "No, limits are reality," he countered. "And pretending they don't exist doesn't make you strong, Alex. It makes you reckless." Her eyes flashed. "Don't call me reckless. You have no idea what I've had to do to build this company." "You're right, I don't," Daniel said. "But I know what it's like to be responsible for people who depend on me. And I know that working them into the ground isn't leadership. It's just fear disguised as ambition." The words landed harder than he'd intended. He saw her flinch, saw something crack in her carefully maintained armor. "Get out," she said quietly. "Alex, I said get out." Daniel left, his heart pounding with adrenaline and frustration. He made it to his office and closed the door, leaning against it as he tried to calm down. That had gone worse than usual. He'd crossed a line, called her fear what it was instead of letting her pretend it was strength. But he'd meant every word. The day crawled by. Daniel threw himself into work, reviewing campaigns, meeting with his team, avoiding the executive floor where Alexandra held court. His phone stayed silent. No follow-up email, no summons to her office, no indication that their morning confrontation had even happened. By 5 o'clock, he was exhausted and irritable, ready to pick up Mia and go home to the simple world of dinner and bedtime stories. But as he packed his laptop, his phone buzzed. "Alexandra, rooftop, now." Daniel stared at the message, debating whether to ignore it, but curiosity won out. He took the elevator to the top floor, then climbed the access stairs to the rooftop terrace that served as the company's unofficial thinking space. Alexandra was standing near the edge, looking out at the city as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The wind caught her hair, pulling strands loose from the tight knot she always wore. She looked smaller up here, less imposing than she did in the office. "You wanted to see me," Daniel said, stopping a few feet away. She didn't turn. "You think I'm afraid?" "I think you're human," he said carefully. "I think you've built something incredible and you're terrified of losing it. And I think that fear is making you push harder than is sustainable." "You don't know what it's like," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind, "to have nothing, to build something from nothing, to know that the second you stop fighting, someone will take it all away." "You're right," Daniel said. "I don't know that, but I know what it's like to lose everything that matters and have to keep going anyway. To be responsible for someone who needs you to be strong even when you're falling apart." She finally turned to look at him. "Your wife?" "Yeah. How long has it been?" 3 years, car accident. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. Alexandra's expression softened in a way he'd never seen. "I'm sorry." "So am I," Daniel said. "But I learned something from it. I learned that strength isn't about never showing weakness. It's about being honest about what you can and can't do, about asking for help when you need it, about trusting the people around you." "I don't know how to do that," she admitted quietly. "Trust people?" "Ask for help, show weakness, believe that anyone will catch me if I fall." Daniel moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in her voice. "Maybe that's why we fight so much. Because I keep pushing you to trust, and you keep pushing back. Or maybe I fight with you because you're the only person in this company who isn't afraid of me," she said, meeting his eyes. "Everyone else treats me like I'm going to explode if they say the wrong thing. But you call me reckless to my face. You tell me when I'm wrong. You fight for what you believe in, even when I'm standing in your way. Someone has to, Daniel said. Why you? Because I care, he said simply. About this company, about the work we do, about the people on my team who trust me to protect them. And about me? The question was barely a whisper. Daniel froze, the air suddenly feeling too thin. What? Do you care about me, Daniel? Or just about fighting with me? He should have deflected. Should have made a joke, changed the subject, maintained the professional distance they'd always kept despite the constant arguments. But standing here in the fading light, with the city sprawling beneath them and something fragile and honest passing between them, he couldn't bring himself to lie. Yes, he said quietly. I care about you, even when you're impossible, even when you're demanding the unreasonable, even when you're too stubborn to see what's right in front of you. She took a step toward him, closing the distance until they were standing close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes. And what's right in front of me? Someone who's tired of fighting you, Daniel said. Someone who wants to understand why you are the way you are. Someone who sees past the CEO to the person underneath. And what if that person is just as difficult as the CEO? She asked. I'd expect nothing less. She smiled then, a real smile that transformed her face from severe to something almost beautiful. Then her expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across her features. Daniel, Whatever she was going to say was cut off as she suddenly stepped forward and kissed him. The shock of it froze Daniel for a heartbeat. Then his brain caught up with reality, and he was kissing her back, his hands coming up to frame her face, her fingers curling into his shirt. It was intense and desperate and completely unexpected. 3 years of tension and arguing and circling each other compressed into a single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexandra looked as stunned as he felt. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I shouldn't have. That was inappropriate. Alex, stop fighting with me all the time, she whispered, then turned and walked away before he could respond. Daniel stood frozen on the rooftop, his heart pounding, his mind reeling, trying to process what had just happened. Alexandra Reed had kissed him, his boss, the CEO, the woman he'd been arguing with for 2 years, had kissed him and then told him to stop fighting and walked away. What the hell was he supposed to do with that? His phone buzzed. A text from Diane reminding him he was late for pickup. Right. Mia. Real life. The world that existed outside of this impossible moment. Daniel took the stairs down in a daze, grabbed his bag from his office, and drove to the school on autopilot. Mia was waiting with Diane, chattering about her day, oblivious to the fact that her father's entire reality had just shifted beneath his feet. Thank you, he said to Diane, taking Mia's hand. You okay? Diane asked, frowning. You look distracted. Just work stuff, Daniel said. I'll be fine. Another lie. Because he had no idea if he'd be fine. He had no idea what came next. He only knew that something had fundamentally changed, and there was no going back to the way things were before. That night, after Mia was asleep, Daniel sat on his couch staring at his phone. He'd typed and deleted a dozen messages to Alexandra, trying to find the right words for a situation that had no script. Finally, he settled on the simplest truth he could manage. Daniel, we should talk about what happened. Her response came within seconds. Alexandra, I know, but not tonight. I need to think. Daniel, okay. Tomorrow? Alexandra, tomorrow. He set the phone down and leaned back, closing his eyes. Tomorrow. They would talk tomorrow and figure out what this meant, if it meant anything at all. But tonight, all he could do was replay that kiss over and over, trying to understand how fighting with someone had turned into something else entirely. Sleep came eventually, fitful and filled with dreams of rooftops and arguments and the taste of her lips. When morning came, Daniel woke with a sense of standing on the edge of something that would either save him or destroy everything he'd worked to build. Either way, there was no going back. The kiss lingered in Daniel's mind for days, an unwelcome ghost that appeared at the worst possible moments. During client presentations, while reviewing campaign drafts, in the quiet darkness of his daughter's bedroom as he read her bedtime stories, his voice steady even as his thoughts spun in circles he couldn't control. Alexandra had kissed him, then told him to stop fighting with her. then walked away as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of his already chaotic life. He hadn't seen her since. She'd been in New York for 3 days, meeting with potential investors, and the relief he'd expected to feel at her absence never came. Instead, he found himself checking his phone compulsively, scanning emails for her name, listening for her voice in the hallways, even though he knew she was 800 miles away. It was pathetic, and he knew it. "Daddy, you're not listening." Mia's small hand tugged at his sleeve, pulling him back to the present. They were at the kitchen table, her coloring book spread open between them, crayons scattered across the surface like confetti. "Sorry, sweetheart," Daniel said, forcing himself to focus. "What were you saying?" "I said I want to make this princess's dress purple, but I don't have purple." "We can mix red and blue," he offered. "That makes purple." Her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really. Here, let me show you." He helped her blend the colors on a scrap of paper, and her delighted squeal when the purple appeared almost made him forget everything else. Almost. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Mia looked up. "Daddy, your phone!" "It's okay, it can wait." But she was already reaching for it, her small fingers surprisingly quick. She held it up triumphantly. "It says Alexandra." Daniel's heart stuttered. He took the phone gently from her hand, his thumb hovering over the screen. It was a text, just 2 words. "Alexandra, we need to talk." Of course they did. He typed back quickly, his jaw tight. "Daniel, when?" "Alexandra, tonight, rooftop, 9 p.m. He stared at the message, anxiety coiling in his chest. The rooftop. The same place where she'd told him she was thinking about selling the company, back when he'd first started challenging her decisions. The same place where they'd argued under the stars more times than he could count. "Daniel, I'll be there." He set the phone down and looked at Mia, who was happily blending more colors, oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. His ex-wife's mother, Diane, had agreed to watch Mia on weeknights when Daniel's schedule demanded it. She was the only family he had left in Chicago, the only person he trusted completely with his daughter. He'd call her after Mia went to bed. "Daddy, look!" Mia held up her drawing, a lopsided castle with a purple-dressed princess standing in front. "It's beautiful," he said, and meant it, just like you. She beamed at him, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. His daughter's smile, the warm glow of the kitchen lights, the simple peace of an ordinary evening. He held on to it as long as he could. By 8:45 that night, Daniel was standing in the elevator, watching the floor numbers climb. Diane had arrived 20 minutes earlier, bringing cookies and a promise to have Mia in bed by 8:30. Mia had hugged him goodnight without suspicion, her trust in him absolute and unquestioning. He wished he had even a fraction of that certainty now. The elevator doors opened onto the rooftop, and the Chicago skyline spread before him like a sea of lights. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. He spotted Alexandra immediately, standing near the edge, her silhouette sharp against the glowing cityscape. She didn't turn when he approached, but he knew she'd heard him. She always did. "You came," she said quietly. "You knew I would." She finally looked at him, and he saw something in her expression he'd never seen before. Uncertainty. Alexandra Reed, who commanded boardrooms and intimidated executives twice her age, looked uncertain. "I owe you an explanation," she said. "You think?" The words came out sharper than he'd intended, frustration bleeding through. "You kissed me, Alex. Then you told me to stop fighting with you and disappeared for 3 days. What the hell was I supposed to do with that?" "I know." She stepped closer, her hands clenched at her sides. "I know, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I didn't mean to just leave like that." "Then why did you?" "Because I panicked." The admission seemed to cost her something. "Because I've spent my entire life building walls, and you keep tearing them down without even trying. Because I don't know how to do this, Daniel. I don't know how to care about someone and not ruin it." He stared at her, the anger draining away as quickly as it had come. "What are you talking about?" She looked out at the city, her voice steady but raw. "Do you know why I fight with you all the time? Why I push back on everything you say, even when I know you're right?" "Because you're stubborn?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Yes, But not just that. She turned back to him. You're the only person in this entire company who isn't afraid of me. Everyone else, they nod, they agree, they do exactly what I tell them without question. But you challenge me. You call me out when I'm wrong. You make me defend my decisions, prove they're worth making. That's my job, Daniel said quietly. No, it's more than that. Her eyes held his. You're the only person who treats me like I'm not some untouchable force to be feared or managed. You treat me like I'm human, and I don't know how to handle that. The vulnerability in her voice stopped him cold. He'd seen Alexandra angry, triumphant, ruthless. But this raw honesty, was something entirely different. So the fighting, he began, was the only way I knew how to connect with you, she finished. I learned a long time ago that conflict is easier than vulnerability. If I'm arguing with you, I'm in control. But if I'm honest about what I feel, she trailed off, shaking her head. I don't know how to be honest about what I feel. Daniel took a step closer, closing the distance between them. Then why did you kiss me? Because I couldn't help it. The words came out like a confession. Because we were standing in my office arguing about deadlines again, and you were so damn passionate about protecting your team, and I realized I didn't want to fight with you anymore. I wanted... She stopped, struggling with the words. What did you want, Alex? You, she said simply. I wanted you. The admission hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous. Daniel's heart was pounding, his mind racing through 1,000 reasons why this was a terrible idea. She was his boss. He was a single father with a daughter who depended on him for stability. Office romances were a disaster waiting to happen, especially when one person held all the power. But standing here, looking at her face in the dim rooftop light, none of those reasons seemed to matter. I fight with you because I care, he said finally. About this company, about the work we do, about the people on my team. I fight with you because I want us to be better, to do better, not because I don't respect you. I know that, she said. I've always known that. And I fight with you, he continued, his voice dropping, because somewhere along the way I started caring about you too. Not just as my boss or as the CEO, as you. Her breath caught. Daniel, I'm terrified, he admitted, of what this could mean, of what happens if it goes wrong. I have a daughter who needs stability, who's already lost one parent. I can't afford to make mistakes that could cost me my job or mess up her life. I know, Alexandra said quietly, and I would never ask you to risk that. But I want to, he said, the words surprising even himself. I want to see where this goes, even though it's reckless and complicated and probably the worst idea either of us has ever had. A slow smile spread across her face, transforming her expression from guarded to something that looked almost like hope. So what do we do? We're careful, Daniel said. We keep it between us, at least for now. We don't let it affect our work or compromise either of our positions, and we figure it out as we go. I can do that, she said. I think. You think? I've never done this before, she said honestly. Any of it. I've never let someone this close. I've never wanted to. Daniel reached out, taking her hand in his. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. Then we'll figure it out together. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at him. I'm not good at this, at being vulnerable, at letting people in. I'll probably mess it up. Probably, he agreed. And I'll probably overthink everything and drive you crazy with questions about where this is going. That does sound like you, she said, a hint of her usual sharpness returning. So we're both disasters, Daniel said, but maybe we can be disasters together. She laughed, the sound unexpected and genuine. That might be the least romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Good thing you're not looking for romance, then. Who says I'm not? He raised an eyebrow. Are you? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. I might be. With you. The admission settled between them, heavy with possibility. Daniel stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly. For real this time? Please. He kissed her slowly, carefully, nothing like the desperate collision in her office. This was deliberate, a choice they were both making with full awareness of the complications ahead. Her hands slid up to his shoulders, anchoring herself to him, and he pulled her closer, feeling the tension drain from her body as she melted against him. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his, her breathing unsteady. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay?" "This is terrifying." "But yeah," he agreed, "it really is." They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the city sprawling beneath them in a carpet of lights. The complications would come. Daniel knew that with absolute certainty. But for now, in this moment, it felt like they'd found something worth the risk. "I should get home," Daniel said eventually, reluctantly. "Diane's with Mia, and I don't like being gone too long." Alexandra nodded, stepping back but keeping hold of his hand. "How is she, Mia?" "Good. She colored a purple princess tonight." A soft smile touched Alexandra's lips. "That sounds nice." It was. He squeezed her hand gently. "You know, she asks about you sometimes." "She does?" "Yeah, she knows you're my boss. She hears me on phone calls sometimes, arguing with you about campaigns." He grinned. "She thinks you must be very smart if you can keep up with me." Alexandra laughed. "I like her already." "She'd like you too," Daniel said, then hesitated. "Eventually, when the time's right." "I understand," Alexandra said quickly. "I wouldn't expect... I know that's complicated." "Everything about this is complicated," Daniel said, "but we'll figure it out." "Together," she echoed. "Together." He kissed her once more, brief and sweet, then forced himself to walk toward the elevator. He looked back once and found her still standing there, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, but that made his chest tighten anyway. The elevator ride down felt surreal, like he was descending from one reality into another. By the time he reached his car, his phone was buzzing with messages from his team about the next day's presentation. Work. Responsibility. The normal world reasserting itself. But when he slid into the driver's seat, he caught himself smiling. The next few weeks were a delicate balancing act. At work, nothing changed, or at least nothing that anyone else could see. Daniel and Alexandra still argued in meetings, still pushed back on each other's ideas, still maintained the professional friction that had defined their relationship from the beginning. But now there was a thread of understanding beneath it, an unspoken agreement that made even their sharpest disagreements feel different. After hours was another story. They met on the rooftop 3 times that first week. Brief conversations, stolen moments between his daughter's bedtime, and the late-night work that never seemed to end. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their fears, the paths that had led them both to this impossible moment. Alexandra told him about growing up with nothing, about fighting her way through college and business school on scholarships and sheer determination, about building her company from scratch when she was barely 25, fueled by anger at everyone who'd told her she couldn't. Daniel told her about his wife, about the car accident that had taken her when Mia was barely 2, about the grief that still caught him off guard sometimes, the guilt of moving forward, the terror of being solely responsible for another human being's entire world. "I'm not trying to replace her," Alexandra said one night, her voice careful. "Your wife. I would never—" "I know," Daniel interrupted gently, "and I'm not looking for you to. This is different. You're different." "Different how?" He considered the question, choosing his words carefully. She was safety, comfort. We grew up together, planned everything together. It was easy because we wanted the same things." He paused. "You're not easy, Alex. You challenge me, push me, make me question everything. But that's what I need now. Someone who doesn't let me coast." "I can definitely promise you won't coast," she said dryly. "I'm counting on it." Their 3rd week of carefully managed secrecy, Marcus cornered Daniel in the break room. "Okay, what's going on?" Marcus demanded, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. Daniel's heart jumped. "What do you mean?" "You and Alexandra, you've been different." "Different how?" "I don't know. Less hostile? You still argue, but it's—" Marcus frowned, searching for the word. "Lighter. Like you're not actually trying to destroy each other anymore." Daniel forced himself to stay calm, reaching for a coffee mug. "Maybe we're just tired of fighting." "Bullshit," Marcus said flatly. "I've known you for 3 years, Daniel. You don't just stop caring about things because you're tired. So what changed?" Nothing changed, Daniel lied, hating how easily the words came. We're just finding better ways to work together. Marcus studied him for a long moment, his expression skeptical. You know you can talk to me, right? If something's going on. I know, Daniel said, meeting his eyes. And I appreciate that. But there's nothing to talk about. Fine, Marcus said, clearly unconvinced. But when you're ready to stop lying to me, I'll be here. He left, and Daniel sagged against the counter, his carefully constructed composure cracking. This was the problem with secrets. They had weight. They created distance between him and the people he trusted, forced him into a version of himself that felt dishonest and wrong. He texted Alexandra immediately. Daniel, Marcus is suspicious. Her response came within seconds. Alexandra, what did you tell him? Daniel, nothing, but he's not buying it. Alexandra, we need to be more careful. Daniel, I know, but being more careful meant more distance at work, fewer moments where they could drop the pretense. It meant going days without really talking, communicating only through emails and formal meetings where every word had to be measured. It was exhausting. The strain showed most at home. Mia noticed he was distracted, though she couldn't articulate why. She'd ask him questions and have to repeat them twice before he heard. She'd show him drawings, and he'd praise them absently, his mind elsewhere. Daddy, are you sad? She asked one night as he tucked her in. The question hit him like a punch. No, sweetheart. Why would you think that? You look sad sometimes, like you're thinking about Mommy. He brushed her hair back from her face, his throat tight. I do think about Mommy sometimes, but I'm not sad. I promise. Okay. She snuggled deeper into her blankets, her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby. So much. He stayed until she fell asleep, watching her breathe in the dim glow of her nightlight. This was what mattered. This small person who trusted him completely, who depended on him to keep her world stable and safe. Whatever he did, whoever he chose to let into his life, had to be right for her too. Was Alexandra right for her? Could someone who'd never had a family, who'd built her entire identity around professional success, make space for a 5-year-old who needed patience and consistency and love? He didn't know. And that uncertainty kept him awake long after Mia's breathing had evened out into sleep. The following Friday, Alexandra called him into her office just before 5. Her assistant had already left and the executive floor was mostly empty, the weekend exodus well underway. Close the door, she said without looking up from her computer. Daniel did, his pulse quickening. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She finally looked at him, and he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. I just needed to see you, actually see you, not the careful version you show everyone else. He crossed to her desk, perching on the edge. I'm right here. Are you? She stood, moving around the desk to stand in front of him. Because lately it feels like you're somewhere else, like you're already pulling away. I'm not, he said immediately. I'm just trying to protect this. Protect us. By hiding? By being smart, he countered. You said it yourself. We need to be careful. Careful doesn't mean distant, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to announce this to the whole company, Daniel, but I need to know you're still in this. Completely out of my depth, but I haven't completely out of my depth, but I haven't changed my mind. Then what do we do? She asked. Because this half-life where we can barely talk to each other is killing me. He'd never heard her sound so vulnerable. Alexandra Reed, who intimidated executives and commanded boardrooms, was standing in front of him asking for something she'd probably never asked for before. Reassurance. We find a middle ground, Daniel said. We keep it professional at work, but we make time outside of work. Real time, not just stolen minutes on a rooftop. How? She asked practically. You have Mia. I have the company. There are only so many hours in a day. Then we use them better, he said. Friday nights after Mia's asleep. Saturday mornings before she wakes up. We'll figure it out. She searched his face, looking for certainty he wasn't sure he had. But he held her gaze, willing her to believe him. Okay, she said finally. We'll try. We'll do more than try, he promised, pulling her closer. We'll make this work. She kissed him then, desperate and searching, and he kissed her back with equal intensity. This was what they'd been missing, not just the physical connection, but the emotional honesty that came with it. The ability to be messy and uncertain and still choose each other anyway. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her head against his chest, her arms wrapped around him tightly. "I'm not good at needing people," she murmured. "I know, but I think I might need you." His arms tightened around her. "Good, because I definitely need you." They stood there in her office as the city darkened outside. Two people who'd built their lives on independence and control, learning how to lean on each other instead. It started with an email. Daniel was reviewing campaign analytics on a Tuesday morning when his inbox pinged. The subject line was blank, the sender an address he didn't recognize. He almost deleted it as spam, but something made him open it instead. What he saw made his blood run cold. It was a photo. Him and Alexandra on the rooftop, taken from a distance but clear enough to be unmistakable. They were standing close, her hand on his chest, his arms around her waist. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks ago. Below the photo, a single line of text. "Does the board know their CEO is sleeping with her direct report?" Daniel's hand shook as he closed the laptop, his mind racing. Someone knew. Someone had been watching them, documenting them, and now they were threatening to expose everything. He grabbed his phone and texted Alexandra with fingers that felt numb. "Daniel, we have a problem, my office. Now." She arrived within 3 minutes, her expression already tight with concern. He didn't speak, just turned his laptop toward her and let her read. The color drained from her face. "When did you get this?" she asked, her voice deadly calm in the way it only got when she was barely holding back panic. 5 minutes ago." "Have you responded?" "No." She nodded, her mind clearly working through scenarios. "Forward it to me. Don't delete it. Don't respond. We need to figure out who sent this." "Alex, if this gets out, it won't," she said firmly, but he could see the fear beneath her composure. "We'll handle it." "How?" Daniel demanded, standing up. "Someone has proof. Someone's been watching us. Even if we deny it, even if we say it's fake, the damage is done the second this goes public." "I know," she said quietly, "but we can't panic. Not yet." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small office. "I could lose my job. You could lose the company." "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Daniel, no, listen to me," he interrupted, turning to face her. "I have a daughter who depends on me. I can't afford to lose everything because we couldn't keep our personal lives separate from work." The words came out harsher than he intended, but he was too frightened to soften them. Alexandra flinched, and he saw something close to hurt flash across her face before she locked it down. "You're right," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "This was reckless. We should have been more careful." "That's not what I meant." "Yes, it is," she said. "And you're right. We put everything at risk for something that was probably a mistake from the beginning." "Alex, don't. I'll handle this," she said, already moving toward the door. "You focus on your work. Keep your head down, and we'll figure out what comes next." She left before he could respond, the door closing behind her with a soft click that felt far too final. Daniel sank into his chair, staring at the closed laptop. What had he just done? He'd lashed out in fear and pushed away the one person who might actually understand what he was going through. But the terror was real, the thought of losing his job, of not being able to provide for Mia, of explaining to his daughter why their entire lives were upending because he'd made a selfish choice. His phone buzzed. Another email from the same anonymous address. "TikTok, Mr. Brooks. Wonder what HR would say about this." His stomach twisted. This wasn't just about exposure anymore. Someone was actively threatening him. He forwarded the email to Alexandra without comment, then forced himself to open the presentation he was supposed to be reviewing. The words blurred on the screen, meaningless. His mind kept circling back to that photo, to the implications, to the careful house of cards they'd built that was now seconds from collapse. Marcus appeared in his doorway 20 minutes later. "Hey, you ready for the client call?" Daniel had completely forgotten. "Yeah, give me 2 minutes." "You okay?" Marcus asked, frowning. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," Daniel lied. "Late night with Mia." "She okay?" "She's fine. Just the usual 5-year-old drama." Marcus nodded, but his expression remained concerned. "If you need to push the call." "I'm fine," Daniel said, forcing himself to stand. Let's do this. The call was a disaster. Daniel's focus was fractured, his responses delayed, his usual sharpness completely absent. The client asked questions he should have anticipated, and he fumbled through answers, watching Marcus cover for him with increasingly worried glances. When it finally ended, Marcus closed the conference room door and turned to him. "Okay, what the hell is going on?" Marcus demanded. "And don't tell me you're fine, because you're clearly not." "I can't talk about it," Daniel said. "Is it Mia? Is she sick?" "No, she's fine, I swear." "Then what?" Marcus pressed. "Because I've never seen you like this. You're always the calm one, the one who has everything figured out. What happened?" Daniel wanted to tell him, wanted to unload the entire mess and ask for advice from the one person at the company he actually trusted. But he couldn't risk it, not when Marcus's loyalty might be tested between friendship and corporate responsibility. "I'm just dealing with some personal stuff," Daniel said finally. "It's nothing that affects work." "Except it clearly is affecting work," Marcus pointed out. "You just bombed a call with our second biggest client." "I know, I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Look, I don't know what's going on, and clearly you're not going to tell me. But whatever it is, you need to figure it out fast. Because if you keep performing like that, people are going to start asking questions. And questions lead to scrutiny you probably don't want right now." The words hit harder than Marcus probably intended. Questions. Scrutiny. Exactly what the anonymous emailer was threatening. "I'll handle it," Daniel said quietly. "You better," Marcus said, but his tone was worried rather than angry. "Because I don't want to see you crash and burn over something that could be fixed." He left, and Daniel slumped in his chair, the weight of everything pressing down on him. His phone buzzed again. Alexandra this time. "Alexandra, rooftop, 6 p.m. We need to talk." The rest of the day crawled by. Daniel went through the motions, answering emails, reviewing presentations, attending meetings, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept checking his inbox compulsively, waiting for another threatening message. None came, which somehow made it worse. The silence felt like a countdown to something inevitable. At 5:45, he packed up his laptop and headed for the elevator. The office was still busy, people grinding through the tail end of the workday. No one looked at him differently. No one whispered as he passed. Whatever bomb was about to drop hadn't detonated yet. Alexandra was already on the rooftop when he arrived, standing in the same spot where they'd first admitted their feelings for each other. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Did you get any more emails?" she asked without preamble. "One, asking what HR would think." She nodded grimly. "I got 3. Same tone. Same implications." "Have you figured out who it is?" "Not yet. I've got a T trying to trace the email address, but whoever this is knows how to cover their tracks." She turned to face him, her expression harder than he'd seen in weeks. "We need to talk about what happens next." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "If this goes public, the board will demand an investigation. HR will get involved. There will be questions about favoritism, about whether your promotions were earned or influenced by our relationship." "They were earned," Daniel said immediately. "I know that. You know that. But perception matters, Daniel. And the perception will be that the CEO was sleeping with her creative director, and that creates problems regardless of the truth." "So what do we do?" She was quiet for a long moment, her jaw tight. "I think I need to resign." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What? No, absolutely not." "It's the cleanest solution," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I step down, take full responsibility. Say the relationship was a lapse in judgment. You stay, your reputation intact, your job secure. Mia's stability is protected." "And you lose everything you've built," Daniel said, anger flaring. "No, I won't let you do that." "It's not your choice," she said quietly. "Like hell it isn't," he shot back. "This isn't just on you, Alex. I'm the one who pushed for this to continue. I'm the one who said we could make it work. You don't get to fall on your sword to protect me." "Someone has to protect you," she said, and there was something broken in her voice that made his chest ache. "You have a daughter who needs you. You have a career you've earned. I won't be the reason you lose that. And I won't be the reason you lose the company you built from nothing," Daniel countered. "There has to be another way." "What other way?" she demanded, frustration breaking through. We can't unring this bell, Daniel. Someone knows. Someone is threatening us. And the second they make good on that threat, everything falls apart. Then we get ahead of it, he said. We control the narrative before they can. How? He took a breath, an idea forming even as the words left his mouth. We tell the truth. We go to the board, to HR, before the email gets sent to them. We explain what happened, when it started, and we make it clear that it hasn't affected our work. We're honest. Completely honest. Alexandra stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You want to voluntarily confess to an inappropriate workplace relationship? It's not inappropriate if we handle it right, Daniel argued. We're two consenting adults. We've kept it separate from work, and we're willing to take whatever steps necessary to ensure it stays that way. They'll still investigate. They'll still question everything. Let them, Daniel said. My record speaks for itself. Every campaign I've led has exceeded expectations. Every promotion I've received has been based on measurable results. There's no evidence of favoritism because there hasn't been any. You're talking about putting your career in the hands of people who might not care about the truth, Alexandra said quietly. People who might see this as a convenient excuse to shake things up. I know, he admitted, but the alternative is living in fear, waiting for the other shoe to drop, or watching you sacrifice everything to protect me. I can't do either of those things, Alex. She looked out at the city, her profile sharp against the darkening sky. This could ruin both of us. Or it could give us a chance to fight for something real, he said, together, instead of hiding or running or letting some anonymous coward make our choices for us. She was quiet for a long time, and he could see her weighing the options, calculating risks the way she always did. Finally, she turned back to him. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it right. Full disclosure, complete transparency. We don't leave anything out. Agreed. And if they decide one of us has to go, we deal with it, Daniel interrupted. Together. No more sacrificial gestures. We're in this together or not at all. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You're insane. Probably, he admitted, but I'd rather be insane with you than safe without you. She closed the distance between them, her hands coming up to frame his face. You're sure about this? Terrified, he said honestly, but sure. She kissed him then, desperate and searching, and he kissed her back with everything he had. This might be the last moment of peace they had before the storm hit. He wanted to remember it, the taste of her lips, the feel of her hands in his hair, the way she held on to him like he was the only solid thing in a world spinning out of control. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. Okay, she whispered. Let's do this. They spent the next hour planning. Alexandra would request an emergency meeting with the board chair and the head of HR for the following morning. They would present a united front, explain the timeline of their relationship, and provide full documentation of Daniel's performance reviews and promotion history. They would offer to implement whatever oversight measures the company deemed necessary, separate reporting structures, third-party reviews of personnel decisions, anything that would address concerns about impropriety. It was a risk, a massive, potentially career-ending risk, but it was also the truth, and there was power in that. Daniel left the rooftop just before 8, his stomach churning with anxiety, but his resolve firm. He picked up Mia from Diane's house, grateful for her cheerful chatter that filled the drive home and kept him from spiraling. Daddy, can we have pancakes for breakfast? Mia asked as he tucked her into bed. Sure, sweetheart. Pancakes sound great. With chocolate chips? Is there any other kind? She giggled, and the sound was so pure, so untainted by the chaos in his life, that it nearly broke him. This was why he was doing this, not just for Alexandra, though he cared about her more than he'd ever expected to, but for Mia, to show her that honesty mattered, that standing up for what you believed in was worth the risk, that running from fear wasn't the same as being smart. I love you, baby, he said, kissing her forehead. Love you too, Daddy. He stayed until she fell asleep, then retreated to the living room where his laptop waited. The anonymous email was still there, a digital threat that refused to go away. He stared at it for a long moment, then made a decision. He hit reply and typed, I know what you're trying to do and it won't work. You want to destroy something good because you're too bitter to let anyone else be happy. But I'm not going to hide anymore. And I'm not going to let you control my life with fear. Do your worst. He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then closed the laptop. His phone rang immediately. Alexandra. "Did you just send an email to our blackmailer?" she demanded, but there was something almost like admiration in her voice. "Maybe. Daniel Brooks, you absolute idiot." "Probably," he agreed. "But I'm tired of being afraid, aren't you?" She was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, I really am." "Then let's stop giving them power." "Tomorrow's going to be hell," she warned. "I know, but at least we'll face it on our terms." "Together," she said softly. "Together." They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking through scenarios, calming each other's nerves, finding strength in the connection they'd been so careful to hide. By the time they hung up, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, a sense of control. Not over the outcome, but over the choice. They were choosing honesty over fear, transparency over secrecy, and whatever came next, they would face it with their heads held high. He slept fitfully that night, dreams filled with boardrooms and accusations and the fear of losing everything. But when he woke at 5:30 to Mia crawling into his bed, her small body warm and trusting against his, he remembered why none of it mattered as much as doing the right thing. "Daddy, you promised pancakes," she mumbled sleepily. "I did. Come on, let's make them." They made chocolate chip pancakes in the quiet morning light, Mia standing on a chair to help stir the batter, her giggles filling the kitchen. Daniel tried to stay present, to soak in this moment of simple normalcy before walking into the storm waiting for him at work. By the time he dropped Mia at school and arrived at the office, Alexandra was already in the conference room with the board chair, James Pritchard, and the head of HR, Lydia Chen. Her text had been brief. "They're ready, conference room B, now." Daniel took a breath, straightened his tie, and walked in. The meeting was exactly as brutal as he'd expected. Pritchard's expression cycled between shock, anger, and calculation. Lydia took notes with a neutral expression that revealed nothing. Alexandra presented their case with clinical precision, dates, timelines, documentation. Daniel supplemented with his performance records, campaign results, team feedback. "Let me get this straight," Pritchard said when they finished. "You two have been in a relationship for over 2 months, and you're just now telling us because someone's threatening to expose you?" "Yes," Alexandra said simply. "We should have disclosed earlier. We were wrong to keep it private." "And you expect us to believe there's been no favoritism, no conflicts of interest?" Lydia asked. "Check the records," Daniel said quietly. "Every promotion, every raise, every project assignment. They're all documented with performance reviews and third-party client feedback. There's a paper trail for everything." "That doesn't change the optics," Pritchard said. "The CEO sleeping with a direct report, even if it's all above board, creates massive liability for this company." "We understand that," Alexandra said, "which is why we're prepared to implement whatever oversight you require. Daniel can report to someone else. We can have external auditors review all personnel decisions. We'll be completely transparent going forward." "And if we decide that's not enough?" Pritchard asked. "If we determine that one or both of you need to step down," Alexandra's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Then we'll accept that decision, but we're asking for the chance to prove this hasn't compromised our work." Lydia exchanged a look with Pritchard. "We'll need to conduct a full investigation. Interview your teams, review all personnel files, audit your decision-making process. This will take weeks." "We understand," Daniel said. "And during that time, both of you will be under intense scrutiny. Any hint of impropriety, any suggestion that this relationship has affected company operations, and there will be consequences." "Understood," Alexandra said. Pritchard stood, his expression grim. "I'll need to brief the full board. This stays confidential until we decide how to handle it publicly. Are we clear?" "Yes," they said in unison. After Pritchard and Lydia left, Daniel and Alexandra sat in the empty conference room, the weight of what they'd just done settling over them like a blanket. "Well," Alexandra said quietly, "we did it." "Yeah." "No going back now." "No." She reached across the table and took his hand. "Whatever happens." "I know," he said. "Me too." They sat there in silence, two people who'd chosen truth over safety, holding on to each other as the world prepared to judge whether that choice had been worth making. The investigation began within hours. Daniel was escorted to a different conference room by Lydia Chen, who carried a leather portfolio thick with documents and wore an expression of professional neutrality that revealed nothing. Across the hall, he knew Alexandra was undergoing the same process with another HR investigator. They'd agreed not to communicate during the investigation unless absolutely necessary. Any appearance of coordinating their stories would only make things worse. "Let's start from the beginning," Lydia said, settling into her chair. "When did your relationship with Ms. Reed begin?" Daniel had prepared for this, had rehearsed the timeline in his mind a dozen times, but sitting here under fluorescent lights with a recorder running felt different than he'd imagined. "The first kiss was approximately 10 weeks ago," he said carefully, "in her office after a disagreement about campaign deadlines. But we didn't actually discuss what it meant or decide to pursue anything until a few days later." "And you understood at the time that this violated company policy?" "We understood it was complicated," Daniel said. "The employee handbook doesn't explicitly prohibit relationships between executives, but we knew it created potential conflicts of interest. Yet you pursued it anyway." It wasn't a question, but he answered it. "Yes." "Why?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because we care about each other. Because despite the complications and the risks, what we found together felt worth protecting." Lydia made a note, her pen scratching across paper. "Walk me through your promotion history. When did you become creative director?" 18 months ago. I was senior creative lead before that." "And who made that decision?" "Alexandra recommended me to the board, but the decision was voted on by the executive committee. It wasn't hers alone. What about your most recent raise?" 6 months ago. It was part of the annual review cycle, tied to the successful launch of the Midwest tourism campaign and the renewal of 3 major clients. "All campaigns you led directly?" "Yes." "All campaigns that Alexandra would have had oversight of?" Daniel kept his voice steady. "Alexandra has oversight of every campaign in this company. That's her job as CEO. But she has particular oversight of your work, given your position." "My work?" "And the work of every other creative director." "Yes." Lydia flipped through her notes. "Your team has grown significantly in the past year, from 5 people to 12. Who approved those hires?" "I made the recommendations. Alexandra approved the budget. HR handled the actual hiring process." "And those budget approvals came through without any pushback?" Daniel felt the trap closing. "There was pushback on 2 of the hires. We went back and forth about whether the ROI justified the expansion. I had to present additional data showing how the larger team would allow us to take on more clients simultaneously. But ultimately, Alexandra approved it. After I proved the business case, yes." The questions continued for 2 hours. Every decision, every project, every interaction between him and Alexandra dissected and examined for evidence of favoritism. Daniel answered truthfully, providing documentation where he could, explaining context where necessary. But he could feel the narrative being constructed around him, the ambitious creative director sleeping with his boss to advance his career. It made him sick. When Lydia finally closed her portfolio, Daniel's shoulders ached from tension. "One more question," she said. "The anonymous emails you both received, do you have any idea who sent them?" "No," Daniel said. "I've thought about it constantly. Someone who has access to the building, who knew our schedules well enough to know we'd be on the rooftop. But beyond that, I have no idea." "And you responded to one of the emails?" "I did." "That was inadvisable." "Probably," Daniel admitted, "but I was tired of being threatened, tired of living in fear of what someone might do with information they had no right to." "You understand that your response could be seen as aggressive, as an attempt to intimidate the sender?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I told them I wasn't going to hide anymore. I didn't threaten them. I didn't try to find out who they were. I just said I wasn't going to let them control my life." Lydia made another note. "We'll need access to all your work emails and messages with Miss Reed. IT will be conducting a full audit." "I have nothing to hide," Daniel said quietly. "We'll see," Lydia said, standing. "Thank you for your cooperation. We'll be in touch." Daniel left the conference room feeling hollowed out. He checked his phone and found a text from Marcus. "Marcus, what's going on? Whole executive floor is locked down. People are saying HR is investigating something big." Daniel stared at the message, debating how much to say. But Marcus deserved better than lies. Daniel, can't talk about it yet, but it's going to get messy. I'm sorry. Marcus, whatever it is, we've got your back. The we hit harder than Daniel expected. His team, the people who'd trusted him, followed his leadership, defended his decisions in meetings. If this investigation concluded poorly, he wouldn't just lose his job. He'd lose their respect. He made it back to his office and closed the door, slumping into his chair. His hands were shaking. The professional composure he'd maintained during the interview was cracking now that he was alone. His phone rang. Alexandra. How did it go? She asked without preamble. About as well as expected. They're building a case for favoritism. I know. They asked me the same questions 3 different ways, trying to catch inconsistencies. She sounded exhausted. Daniel, they're going to go through everything, every email, every text message, every conversation anyone remembers having about you. I know. If they find anything, they won't, he interrupted, because there's nothing to find. Every decision was based on merit. Every promotion was earned. You sound certain. I am certain, he said firmly. I know what I've accomplished, Alex. I know the work I've put in, and I'm not going to let them rewrite that history because it's more convenient than accepting the truth. She was quiet for a moment. I wish I had your confidence. You built this company from nothing, Daniel reminded her. You fought off hostile takeovers, economic downturns, and competitors twice your size. You're not going to lose it because you fell in love. The word hung between them. They hadn't said it before, hadn't named what this was beyond caring and needing and choosing each other, but it was out there now, and Daniel didn't want to take it back. Daniel, I mean it, he said. Whatever happens with this investigation, whatever the board decides, I don't regret this. I don't regret us. Even if it costs you everything? Even then, he heard her breath catch. I love you too. Should have said it sooner. Despite everything, despite the fear and the uncertainty, and the investigation threatening to tear apart everything they'd built, Daniel smiled. We're really bad at timing. Terrible, she agreed, but I meant what I said. I love you. I love you, he said, and we're going to get through this. Together? Together. They talked for a few more minutes, finding comfort in each other's voices, before the demands of the workday pulled them back to separate corners of the building. Daniel threw himself into campaign reviews, client calls, team meetings, anything to keep his mind occupied. But the investigation was a constant presence, a shadow that followed him through every interaction. By the end of the week, the whispers had started. Daniel heard them in the break room, in hushed conversations that stopped when he approached. He saw them in the careful way people looked at him, the questions in their eyes they didn't quite ask. Marcus tried to run interference, but even he couldn't stop the speculation entirely. People are saying you and Alexandra are together, Marcus said Friday afternoon, cornering Daniel in his office. That there's an investigation into whether she showed you favoritism. Daniel closed his laptop slowly. And what do you think? I think I've known you for 3 years, and I've never seen you take a shortcut or ask for special treatment, Marcus said. I also think you've been different the past few months, distracted, stressed in a way that's not about work. Marcus, I don't care if you're sleeping with her, Marcus interrupted. That's your business. What I care about is whether you're okay, because you look like you're barely holding it together. Daniel's carefully maintained composure cracked. He slumped in his chair, the weight of the week crushing down on him. I don't know if I am okay. Marcus closed the door and sat down across from him. Talk to me. So Daniel did. He told Marcus everything, the rooftop confession, the careful months of hiding, the anonymous emails, the decision to come forward. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression cycling through surprise, concern, and something that looked like respect. You came forward voluntarily? Marcus asked when Daniel finished. We didn't have a choice. Someone was going to expose us anyway. At least this way we controlled the narrative. That took guts, Marcus said quietly. Stupid, probably, but gutsy. Stupid seems to be the consensus, Daniel said dryly. Did you actually earn your promotions? Every single one. Then you've got nothing to worry about, Marcus said. The numbers don't lie, Daniel. You've delivered results consistently. You've led campaigns that brought in millions. You've built a team that's loyal as hell. That's not favoritism. That's just being good at your job. Try convincing the board of that. I will if I have to, Marcus said. Look, I know I joke around a lot, and I know we don't do the whole deep emotional conversation thing, but you're my friend, and I'm not going to let them tear you down without a fight. Daniel's throat tightened. Thanks, man. Don't thank me yet. I'm about to make things more complicated. How? Marcus leaned forward. I'm going to Lydia Chen. I'm going to tell her that I've worked with you since you were a junior creative, that I've seen every step of your career progression, and that there's never been even a hint that you got where you are through anything other than talent and hard work. Marcus, you don't have to. Yeah, I do, Marcus said firmly, because if they're building a case based on perception instead of facts, then they need to hear from people who actually know you, who've actually worked with you. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one who feels that way. He was right. Over the next 3 days, 6 members of Daniel's team independently contacted HR to provide statements. They talked about his leadership, his integrity, the way he fought for them in budget meetings, and protected them from impossible deadlines. They provided examples of campaigns where he'd pushed back against Alexandra's initial direction and been proven right. They documented instances where he'd recommended team members for promotions over his own interests. The statements landed on Lydia Chen's desk like a pile of evidence she couldn't ignore. Daniel didn't know about any of it until Marcus told him the following Monday. Your team went to bat for you, Marcus said, grinning. Every single person you've ever managed, plus a few people from other departments who've worked with you on projects. They basically told HR that if you got where you are through favoritism, then the entire company is blind. Daniel was speechless. He'd known his team was loyal, but this was beyond anything he'd expected. Why? He managed finally. Because you're a good leader, Marcus said simply. Because you've earned their respect. And because they know the difference between someone who's good at playing politics and someone who's good at the actual work. The investigation continued, but the tone shifted. Lydia Chen called Daniel back in for a second interview, this time with a different set of questions. Instead of focusing on his relationship with Alexandra, she asked about specific campaigns, about his decision-making process, about how about how he handled conflicts with other executives. Your team speaks highly of you, she said at one point. Multiple people mentioned that you've turned down opportunities that would have advanced your career if it meant abandoning projects you believed in. I don't measure success by titles, Daniel said. I measure it by the work we produce and the impact we have. That's consistent with what we're hearing, Lydia acknowledged. Can you give me an example of a time you disagreed with Ms. Reed's direction on a campaign? Daniel thought back. The automotive client wanted to pivot their entire brand identity toward electric vehicles. Alexandra thought we should ease them into it, do a hybrid approach. I argued that half measures wouldn't work, that consumers could smell uncertainty from a mile away. We needed to commit fully or not at all. And? We argued about it for 2 weeks. She brought in market research. I brought in consumer sentiment data. Eventually, she agreed to let me present both approaches to the client. Who chose the full pivot? The client did, but Alexandra supported the decision once it was made, even though it wasn't her initial recommendation. Lydia made notes. And this kind of disagreement was common? Constant, Daniel said honestly. We push each other. That's what makes the work better. Even now? Even with your personal relationship? Especially now, Daniel said. Because we both know we can't afford any perception that personal feelings are clouding professional judgment. If anything, we're harder on each other than we used to be. The interview lasted another hour, but Daniel left feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Maybe they could actually prove this. Maybe the work would speak louder than the gossip. But the real test came 3 days later, when the board called an emergency meeting. Alexandra texted him at 6 in the morning. Alexandra. Board meeting today at 2 p.m. They've completed their preliminary investigation. This is it. Daniel stared at the message, his heart pounding. This was the moment that would determine everything. Their careers, their relationship, their future. He got Mia ready for school mechanically, his mind elsewhere. She chattered about a field trip to the aquarium, and he responded with the appropriate enthusiasm, but the words felt distant. Everything felt distant except the crushing weight of what was coming. "Daddy, are you listening?" Mia asked, tugging his sleeve. "Sorry, sweetheart. Say that again." "I said Mrs. Patterson is letting me be the line leader." "That's wonderful, baby. You'll be a great line leader." She beamed at him, and he forced himself to stay present, to memorize this moment. Whatever happened today, he needed to remember why it mattered. Not the job, not the career, but this. His daughter's trust. Her innocent belief that her daddy could handle anything. He dropped her at school and drove to the office, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The building looked the same as always, glass and steel reaching toward a cloudy sky. But everything felt different, like he was walking toward a cliff edge, unable to see what waited on the other side. Alexandra was already in her office when he arrived. She looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, despite the careful makeup. But when she saw him, relief flooded her face. "You came early," she said. "Couldn't stay away." She crossed to him, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. They stayed like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other. "Whatever happens in there," she started. "I know," he said. "We knew the risks. I need you to know that I don't regret this," she said fiercely. "Even if I lose the company, even if everything falls apart, I don't regret choosing you." "Neither do I," he said, tilting her face up to kiss her. Not for a second. They held each other until her assistant knocked, a polite warning that the board members were arriving. Then they separated, straightening clothes and composing expressions, preparing to face judgment. The boardroom was full when they entered. Pritchard sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members. Executives from partner companies, early investors, industry veterans. Lydia Chen sat off to the side with her investigation file. "Mrs. Reed, Mr. Brooks, please sit," Pritchard said, gesturing to two chairs across from him. They sat, and Daniel forced himself to breathe evenly. This was it. Pritchard opened a folder, scanning the contents briefly before looking up. "We've completed our preliminary investigation into your relationship and its potential impact on company operations. Ms. Chen, would you summarize your findings?" Lydia stood, her expression professionally neutral. "We conducted interviews with both Ms. Reed and Mr. Brooks, as well as with 12 members of their respective teams and colleagues. We reviewed all personnel files related to Mr. Brooks's employment, including performance reviews, promotion recommendations, and salary adjustments. We also audited campaign assignments and client interactions to determine if there was any pattern of preferential treatment." She paused, flipping to another page. "Our findings show that Mr. Brooks's career progression has been consistent with his performance metrics. Every promotion was tied to measurable results and was recommended not only by Ms. Reed but also by other members of the executive team. His salary increases align with industry standards and company policy. Campaign assignments were distributed based on expertise and availability, not personal preference." Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear her words. "Furthermore," Lydia continued, "we found multiple documented instances of professional disagreement between Ms. Reed and Mr. Brooks, some of which resulted in significant changes to company strategy. This suggests that their personal relationship has not prevented either party from exercising independent professional judgment." She closed the folder. "While we do believe that the relationship should have been disclosed earlier, we found no evidence of misconduct, favoritism, or ethical violations." The relief that crashed through Daniel was so intense, he felt dizzy. Beside him, Alexandra's hand found his under the table, squeezing tightly. But Pritchard wasn't smiling. No evidence of misconduct doesn't mean there are no consequences. The optics of this situation are problematic. A CEO in a relationship with a direct report creates liability for this company, regardless of whether impropriety actually occurred. "We understand that," Alexandra said, her voice steady, "which is why we're prepared to implement whatever structural changes you require." "We've discussed several options," Pritchard said. "The first would be for Mr. Brooks to report to a different executive, removing the direct reporting relationship." "That's acceptable," Daniel said immediately. "The second option would be for one of you to take a leave of absence while we develop a long-term solution." Alexandra's hand tightened on his. "How long of a leave?" "Minimum 3 months, possibly longer." Daniel opened his mouth to volunteer, but Alexandra cut him off. "I'll take the leave." "Alex," Daniel started, "I built this company. she said firmly, looking at the board members. I know every operation, every client relationship, every strategic initiative. If I step away for 3 months, I can hand off knowledge to my executive team and ensure continuity. Daniel is essential to the creative department's daily operations. His absence would create more disruption. That's not, Daniel tried again. It's logical, she interrupted, still looking at Pritchard. And it gives us time to restructure reporting lines and implement whatever oversight you want. I'll work with my executive team to ensure a smooth transition, and I'll be available for consultation remotely. But I'll step back from day-to-day operations. Pritchard exchanged looks with the other board members. We'll need to make a public statement, something that addresses the relationship without creating additional scandal. I'll draft it personally, Alexandra said. Full transparency. The relationship exists, it didn't compromise professional judgment, and we're taking steps to ensure appropriate oversight going forward. And if the press picks this up, another board member asked, if clients start asking questions, then we answer them honestly, Alexandra said. Our results speak for themselves. Client retention is at 92%. Revenue is up 18% year over year. We've won 3 industry awards in the past 6 months. Those numbers don't lie. The board members conferred quietly among themselves. Daniel felt like he was watching his future being decided by committee, powerless to influence the outcome. His hand was still clasped with Alexandra's, and he held on like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. Finally, Pritchard spoke. We'll accept Ms. Reed's proposal for a temporary leave of absence starting Monday. During that time, the CFO will assume CEO responsibilities. Mr. Brooks will report to the Chief Strategy Officer to eliminate the direct reporting relationship. We'll review the situation in 90 days and determine next steps at that time. And our relationship? Daniel asked quietly. As long as it doesn't interfere with company operations, your personal lives are your own business, Pritchard said. But we'll be watching. Any hint of impropriety, any suggestion that this arrangement isn't working, and there will be consequences. Are we clear? Crystal, Alexandra said. Then we're done here. Ms. Reed, please work with Lydia on the transition plan and public statement. Mr. Brooks, HR will brief you on your new reporting structure. They were dismissed, and Daniel followed Alexandra out of the boardroom in a daze. They'd survived. They'd actually survived. But in the hallway, away from the board members, Alexandra's composure cracked. She leaned against the wall, her eyes closing. 3 months, she whispered. They're taking my company away for 3 months. You'll get it back, Daniel said fiercely, taking her hands. And in the meantime, you'll prove that you're more than this company, that you have a life outside of work. I don't know how to have a life outside of work, she admitted. Then I'll teach you, he said, starting with actually sleeping more than 4 hours a night and eating meals that don't come from the vending machine. Despite everything, she smiled. That sounds terrible. It'll be good for you, he promised. And Alex, thank you for offering to step away. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, she said, because you were right. We're in this together, and that means protecting each other, not just ourselves. He kissed her then, right there in the hallway where anyone could see. They'd spent months hiding, months carefully maintaining distance. But that was over now. The board knew, HR knew. Soon the whole company would know. They had nothing left to hide. When the company-wide email went out Monday morning, Daniel was in a strategy meeting with his new supervisor, Margaret Chen, the Chief Strategy Officer. His phone buzzed with notifications, and he watched as everyone in the room checked their devices simultaneously. The subject line read, Leadership Update and Commitment to Transparency. Margaret glanced at her screen, then at Daniel with an expression of carefully maintained neutrality. I assume you've already seen this. Not yet, Daniel admitted, though he knew exactly what it said. He and Alexandra had reviewed the draft together over the weekend, wordsmithing every sentence to strike the impossible balance between honesty and discretion. He opened the email and read Alexandra's words, even though he'd already memorized them. Dear team, I want to address a matter that requires transparency and accountability. Over the past several months, I have been in a personal relationship with Daniel Brooks, our creative director. This relationship developed organically and was not disclosed in accordance with company policy. While an independent investigation has found no evidence of professional misconduct or favoritism, I recognize that the optics create concerns about judgment and leadership. Therefore, effective immediately, I am taking a temporary leave of absence to allow for restructuring of reporting relationships and implementation of additional oversight measures. I remain committed to this company and its mission, and I am confident that our leadership team will continue to deliver exceptional results. Thank you for your understanding and continued dedication. The message was professional, measured, and utterly devoid of the emotion Daniel knew had gone into writing it. Alexandra had drafted 7 versions before settling on this one, each iteration stripping away more of her vulnerability until only the facts remained. The response was immediate and chaotic. Within minutes, the office erupted into hushed conversations, shocked expressions, and speculation that ranged from supportive to vicious. Daniel kept his head down, focusing on Margaret's briefing about reporting structures and approval processes. But he could feel the weight of eyes on him everywhere he went. Marcus appeared in his office doorway before lunch, closing the door behind him. "Well," Marcus said, dropping into a chair. "That's one way to start a Monday." "Yeah," Daniel said tiredly. "How are you holding up?" "Ask me in a week." Marcus studied him for a moment. "For what it's worth, I think she did the right thing. Getting ahead of it, I mean. Could have been a lot worse if it leaked some other way." "That's what we figured," Daniel said. "Doesn't make it easier." "People are talking," Marcus warned. "Some of it's supportive, a lot of it's not." "I know. There's a rumor going around that you got promoted because you were sleeping with her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "The investigation cleared me. The numbers don't lie." "I know that. You know that. But people believe what they want to believe." Marcus leaned forward. "Listen, your team is solid. We've got your back. But you need to be prepared for this to get ugly before it gets better." He was right. By the end of the week, Daniel had been subjected to pointed comments in meetings, cold shoulders in the break room, and one particularly brutal conversation with a senior executive who suggested that perhaps Daniel should consider looking for opportunities elsewhere to avoid further distraction. Daniel had smiled politely and said he had no intention of going anywhere, but the constant scrutiny wore on him. Every decision was questioned, every campaign choice examined for bias, every interaction with leadership analyzed for signs of improper influence. He worked longer hours than ever, determined to prove that his results spoke louder than gossip. His team rallied around him, delivering exceptional work that made it harder for critics to claim he was coasting on favoritism. Still, the isolation was crushing. Without Alexandra in the building, without the ability to steal moments together between meetings, Daniel felt the full weight of what they'd sacrificed. He went home to Mia every night exhausted, forcing brightness he didn't feel, reading bedtime stories with a smile that felt painted on. Alexandra called every evening after Mia was asleep. Those conversations became Daniel's lifeline, the only time he could drop the armor and just be honest about how hard this was. "I had 3 people today suggest I only got where I am because of you," Daniel said one night, slumped on his couch, with a beer he'd barely touched. "One of them was someone I thought was a friend." "I'm sorry," Alexandra said, and he could hear the guilt in her voice. "This is my fault." "It's not your fault that people would rather believe gossip than look at actual performance data," Daniel said. "But it's exhausting defending myself constantly." "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Coming forward, Daniel thought about it, really thought about it. No, because the alternative was living in fear, letting someone else control our lives. "This is hard, but at least it's honest." "I miss you," she said. "I miss the work, but mostly I miss you." "I miss you too." He paused. "How are you handling the leave?" "Terribly," she admitted. "I've reorganized my apartment 3 times. I've read 4 business books. I've cooked actual meals, which is somehow more stressful than running a company." Despite everything, Daniel smiled. "You're supposed to be relaxing." "I don't know how to relax. Every time I try, I think about what's happening at the company without me, whether the transition is going smoothly, whether clients are concerned." "Margaret updates you twice a week," Daniel reminded her. "You know everything's running fine. Fine isn't exceptional. Sometimes fine is enough." She was quiet for a moment. "I never learned how to be okay with enough. I always had to be more, do more, prove more." Because if I slowed down, someone might realize I didn't belong there in the first place. The vulnerability in her voice made Daniel's chest ache. You built that company from nothing, Alex. You belong there more than anyone. Then why does it feel like they took it away so easily? Because they didn't take anything, Daniel said firmly. You chose to step back. You made a strategic decision to protect what we're building together. That's not losing. That's choosing what matters most. You matter most, she said quietly. You and the possibility of actually having a life that's about more than quarterly earnings and board meetings. Good, Daniel said, because I plan on being pretty demanding about getting quality time with you. Is that a threat or a promise? Both. She laughed, and the sound was worth every difficult conversation, every pointed comment, every moment of doubt. 3 weeks into Alexandra's leave, Daniel came home to find an unexpected visitor. Diane was watching Mia, but sitting at his kitchen table was James Pritchard, the board chair who'd presided over the investigation. Daniel's stomach dropped. Mr. Pritchard, I wasn't expecting you. I apologize for the intrusion, Pritchard said, standing. I wanted to speak with you privately, away from the office. Diane excused herself, taking Mia to her bedroom to play. Daniel sat down across from Pritchard, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Is there a problem? Daniel asked carefully. Not exactly, Pritchard said. I wanted to discuss your performance over the past 3 weeks. Has there been a complaint? Quite the opposite. Pritchard pulled out a tablet, showing Daniel a series of metrics. Client satisfaction scores are up, campaign delivery times have improved, and we've received unsolicited feedback from 3 major clients specifically praising your leadership. Daniel stared at the numbers, not quite believing what he was seeing. I don't understand. You've been working under tremendous pressure, Pritchard said. Scrutiny from colleagues, questions about your competence, the absence of someone I assume you've come to rely on. Most people would crack under that kind of stress. Instead, you've delivered some of the best work of your career. I had something to prove, Daniel said quietly. You did, and you've proven it. Pritchard leaned back. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Brooks. When this situation first came to light, I had my doubts. The optics were terrible, and I've seen too many cases where relationships in the workplace lead to poor judgment and compromised ethics. But the numbers don't lie. Your work speaks for itself. And after watching how you've handled these past few weeks, I'm convinced that whatever relationship you have with Miss Reed hasn't clouded your professional judgment. Relief flooded through Daniel. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Pritchard said. I'm here because we need to discuss what happens when Ms. Reed returns. Daniel's pulse quickened. Is there a problem with her returning? Some board members have concerns. They worry that bringing her back creates the same issues we tried to resolve with her leave. That's not fair, Daniel said immediately. She's the best CEO this company has ever had. Her vision, her leadership, her ability to see opportunities others miss, you can't replace that. I agree, Pritchard said, which is why I'm telling you this in advance. There's going to be a board vote in 6 weeks about whether to make her leave permanent or bring her back with conditions. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. They're considering forcing her out permanently? Some are. Others believe she's proven herself and deserves the chance to return. Pritchard met his eyes. Your performance these past weeks helps her case. It demonstrates that the concerns about favoritism were unfounded. But we need more than that. What do you need? We need to see that the company can function with both of you in leadership positions without the relationship creating conflicts or perceptions of impropriety. We need structural safeguards that go beyond just changing reporting lines. What kind of safeguards? Pritchard outlined a plan. Independent review of all personnel decisions affecting Daniel's department. Quarterly audits of campaign assignments. Mandatory disclosure of any business decisions where their personal relationship might create even the appearance of bias. It was comprehensive, rigorous, and designed to eliminate any possible concern about favoritism. If we implement this, Pritchard said, and if your performance continues at this level, I believe we can bring her back. But it requires commitment from both of you. You'll have it, Daniel said without hesitation. This won't be easy, Pritchard warned. You'll be under constant scrutiny, every decision questioned, every success analyzed for signs of preferential treatment. I know, Daniel said, but she's worth it. The company needs her. And you need her, Pritchard observed. Daniel met his eyes. Yes, sir. I do. Pritchard nodded slowly. Then prove it. Show us that what you have makes the company stronger, not weaker. Because if you can do that, you won't just save her position. You'll change how we think about leadership and relationships in professional settings. After Pritchard left, Daniel sat in his kitchen for a long time, processing everything. Then he called Alexandra. The board's voting in 6 weeks about whether to bring you back, he said without preamble. I know, she said quietly. Margaret told me. Some of them want me out permanently. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do, Daniel said fiercely. Because I'm going to prove that we make this company better together. That what we have doesn't compromise our judgment. It sharpens it. Daniel, I love you, he interrupted. And I'm not going to lose you because some board members can't see past their own assumptions about how relationships and professionalism work. We're going to show them a different way. She was quiet for a long moment. You really believe that? I know it, he said. We've already proven that merit matters more than gossip. Now we prove that loving each other makes us better leaders, not worse ones. That's a hell of a thing to prove. Good thing we're both stubborn as hell, Daniel said. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. When this is over, Daniel said, I want you to meet Mia. Really meet her. Not as my boss or some distant figure, but as someone who's part of my life, part of our lives. Alexandra's breath caught. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The next 6 weeks were a blur of relentless work and careful documentation. Daniel threw himself into campaigns with renewed intensity, ensuring every decision was backed by data, every creative choice justified by strategy. His team rose to the challenge, delivering work that exceeded even their own high standards. But more than that, Daniel began building the case for Alexandra's return. He compiled performance metrics from before and during her leave, showing how her strategic vision had shaped the company's success. He documented client relationships she'd nurtured, partnerships she'd forged, industry recognition she'd earned. He gathered testimonials from employees who credited her leadership for their professional growth. Marcus helped, recognizing what Daniel was doing and throwing his full support behind it. Together, they built an undeniable argument that Alexandra Reed wasn't just a competent CEO, she was irreplaceable. The board meeting happened on a gray Thursday in early autumn. Daniel wasn't allowed to attend, but Alexandra was required to present her case for why she should return. She'd called him the night before, her voice tight with nerves. What if they say no? She'd asked. Then we figure out what comes next, Daniel had said. Together. I don't know if I can build another company from scratch. You won't have to, he'd promised, because they're going to say yes. Now he sat in his office, unable to focus on work, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Marcus stuck his head in twice, offering coffee and moral support. The team tiptoed around him, sensing his tension. Finally, at 3:15, his phone rang. Alexandra. They voted, she said, and he couldn't read her voice. Daniel's heart stopped. And? 7-2 in favor of my return. With conditions, but I'm coming back. The relief that crashed through him was so intense he had to sit down. Alex, that's incredible. It's because of you, she said, and he could hear tears in her voice. Pritchard showed them the case you built, the performance data, the testimonials, everything. He said you made it impossible for them to argue that we couldn't work together professionally. We made it impossible, Daniel corrected. This was always both of us. I love you, she said. I know I've said it before, but I need you to really hear it. I love you, Daniel Brooks, and I'm so grateful you fought for us. Always, he promised. When do you come back? 2 weeks. They want the transition to be gradual. Give Margaret time to hand things back over. 2 weeks? Daniel repeated. We can do 2 weeks. And Daniel? Her voice softened. About meeting Mia. Are you still sure? More than ever, he said. She's been asking why I smile at my phone so much lately. I think it's time she knows. The conversation with Mia happened that weekend. Daniel kept it simple, age-appropriate, honest. You know how Daddy works with a lot of people? He started, sitting on her bed while she colored. Uh-huh. Well, there's someone special I work with. Her name is Alexandra, and she's become really important to me. Mia looked up, her eyes curious. Like a friend? Kind of like a friend, Daniel said carefully. But also more than that, like how Mommy was important to me. Mia's expression became very serious, the way it always did when he mentioned her mother. Do you love her? The directness of 5-year-olds never ceased to amaze him. Yeah, sweetheart, I do. Does she love you? She does. Mia considered this, her crayon hovering over the paper. Is she nice? Very nice. She works really hard and cares a lot about people. Does she like kids? Daniel smiled. I think she does. But she doesn't know very many kids, so she might be a little nervous about meeting you. Why would she be nervous about meeting me? Mia asked, genuinely puzzled. Because you're the most important person in the world to me, Daniel said, and she wants you to like her. Mia thought about this. Can I meet her? Would you want to? Yeah, I want to see if she's nice to you. Daniel's throat tightened. She's very nice to me, baby. Okay, Mia said, returning to her coloring. Can we get ice cream when we meet her? Absolutely. That was it. No drama, no complicated questions, just a 5-year-old's straightforward acceptance that her father cared about someone new. The meeting happened the following Saturday at the park. Neutral territory, low pressure, with the built-in distraction of a playground if conversation lagged. Daniel arrived early with Mia, letting her burn off energy on the swings before Alexandra showed up. When Alexandra appeared, Daniel saw the nerves she was trying to hide. She'd dressed casually, jeans and a sweater that made her look softer than her usual professional armor. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Mia, Daniel called gently. Come here for a second. Mia ran over, slightly breathless. She looked at Alexandra with open curiosity. This is Alexandra, Daniel said. Alex, this is Mia. Alexandra crouched down to Mia's level, her expression uncertain but warm. Hi, Mia. Your dad's told me a lot about you. He told me about you too, Mia said. He said you might be nervous. Alexandra laughed, surprised. He did? Uh-huh. But you don't have to be nervous. I'm nice. I can see that, Alexandra said, smiling genuinely now. I like your shoes. Are those sparkly? Mia looked down at her light-up sneakers. Yeah, watch. She stomped her feet, making them flash. Wow, Alexandra said, appropriately impressed. Those are much cooler than my shoes. Your shoes are pretty, though, Mia said generously. Then, with the abruptness of childhood, do you want to see the swings? Alexandra glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. I'd love to. Daniel watched as Mia grabbed Alexandra's hand and dragged her toward the playground, chattering about the different equipment and which slides were the fastest. Alexandra listened intently, asking questions, laughing at Mia's enthusiasm. She was awkward at first, her responses too measured, her movements too careful, but gradually she relaxed, letting Mia's energy pull her out of her own head. By the time they got ice cream an hour later, Mia was explaining the complex social dynamics of her kindergarten class, while Alexandra listened with genuine interest. And then Emma said that purple was her favorite color, but I said purple is everyone's favorite color, so it can't just be hers, Mia said seriously, licking her chocolate cone. That's very logical, Alexandra said. What did Emma say to that? She said I was being mean, but I wasn't being mean. I was being truthful. Alexandra glanced at Daniel, something like amusement in her eyes. Truth is important. That's what Daddy says, too. They spent another hour at the park, and by the time Daniel and Alexandra walked Mia back to the car, his daughter was holding both their hands, swinging between them. Can Alexandra come again? Mia asked as Daniel buckled her into her car seat. Would you like that? He asked. Yeah, she's nice, and she said she'd help me build a Lego castle next time. Daniel looked at Alexandra, who shrugged sheepishly. I may have made promises I don't know how to keep. We'll figure it out together, Daniel said, and meant it about more than just Legos. After Mia was settled at home with a movie, Daniel and Alexandra stood in his kitchen, the weight of the day settling around them. That went better than I expected, Alexandra said quietly. She liked you, Daniel said. I could tell. She's incredible, Alexandra said. Smart and funny and so completely sure of herself. She's like you. She's better than me, Daniel said. She doesn't overthink everything. Neither do you, when it matters. Alexandra moved closer, her hands finding his. Thank you for letting me meet her, for trusting me with that. You're part of my life now, Daniel said simply. That means being part of hers too. I don't know how to do this, Alexandra admitted. The parent thing, the domestic thing, I'm going to mess it up. Probably, Daniel agreed. And I'm going to overthink everything and drive you crazy with schedules and planning. We're both going to mess it up sometimes. But we'll figure it out? Yeah, he promised. We'll figure it out. She kissed him then, soft and grateful, and he pulled her closer, feeling like pieces he hadn't known were scattered were finally falling into place. 2 weeks later, Alexandra returned to work. The announcement was met with mixed reactions, some genuine applause, some reserved skepticism, some outright hostility. But she walked into the building with her head high and her purpose clear. Daniel was waiting in her office when she arrived, along with Margaret and the rest of the executive team. They spent the morning reviewing everything that had happened during her leave, the decisions made, the clients won, the campaigns launched. You kept everything running smoothly, Alexandra said to Margaret. Thank you. It's your company, Margaret said. I was just keeping it warm. Alexandra turned to Daniel and something unspoken passed between them. They'd fought so hard for this moment, the ability to work together, to lead together, to prove that their relationship made them stronger rather than weaker. Let's get to work, Alexandra said. The months that followed were challenging but transformative. With the new oversight structures in place, Daniel and Alexandra learned to navigate leadership together in ways that were transparent and above reproach. They still argued in meetings, still pushed back on each other's ideas, but now there was a foundation of trust that made those conflicts productive rather than destructive. The company thrived. Client retention hit record levels. Revenue exceeded projections. Industry recognition poured in for campaigns that pushed creative boundaries while delivering measurable results. But more than professional success, they built a life together. Alexandra started joining Daniel and Mia for weekend outings, learning the rhythms of parenthood, discovering that she was capable of softness she'd never allowed herself before. She taught Mia about business and ambition. Mia taught her about play and presence. Daniel watched his daughter and the woman he loved building their own relationship, independent of him, and felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't even realized was unsettled. For the first time since his wife died, he could imagine a future that wasn't just about survival. It was about building something new, something that honored the past while embracing possibility. One evening, nearly a year after everything had started, Daniel found Alexandra on his apartment balcony, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Mia was asleep inside, worn out from a day at the zoo. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "How different my life looks now," she said quietly. "A year ago, I was CEO of a successful company, and that was everything. My entire identity, my whole world. And now? Now I'm still CEO of a successful company," she said, turning to face him. "But I'm also in love with a man who challenges me every day to be better. I'm learning how to be part of a family. I'm discovering that success isn't just about quarterly earnings and market share." "What is it about?" Daniel asked softly. "It's about this," she said, gesturing to the apartment behind them where Mia slept. "Building something that matters. Being with people who see you, really see you, and love you anyway. Fighting for what you believe in, even when it's terrifying." "We did fight," Daniel said. "We fought like hell." "And we won," she said, smiling. "Not because we were perfect, but because we were honest. Because we chose each other, even when it would have been easier to walk away." "I would never walk away from you," Daniel said. "I know," she said. "That's what made all the difference." She kissed him, slow and sweet, and Daniel held her close, thinking about everything they'd survived. The secrecy and fear, the investigation and scrutiny, the board votes and public statements, the gradual building of trust with his daughter, the careful integration of their lives. It had been messy and complicated and sometimes painful. But standing here now, with the woman he loved in his arms and his daughter safe inside, Daniel knew he wouldn't change any of it. They'd fought for this. For the right to love each other openly, to work together without shame, to build a life that defied easy categorization. And they'd won. Not because the path was easy, but because they'd walked it together. Inside, Mia stirred in her sleep, calling out for her daddy. Daniel reluctantly pulled away from Alexandra, but she followed him inside, settling on the couch while he checked on his daughter. When he returned, she'd made tea for both of them, learned his preferences over months of quiet evenings just like this one. "Thank you," he said, taking the cup. "For tea?" "For everything," he said, for fighting with me, for choosing me, for loving Mia, for being brave enough to risk everything for something real. "Thank you for not letting me hide," she said, "for pushing me to be honest even when it terrified me, for showing me that vulnerability isn't weakness." "We make a good team," Daniel said. "The best," she agreed. They sat together in the quiet comfort of his living room, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and refused to let go. The company would keep growing, the challenges would keep coming, the scrutiny would probably never completely disappear. But they had each other. They had Mia. They had something worth fighting for. And that, Daniel thought, was more than enough. It was everything.